Welcome to Tell Me More, an Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of the modern workplace.
Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. My name is Dr. Lauren Gant, and I am a Senior Workplace Advisory Manager at Allsteel. This is part 2 of our 3-part series talking about change in the workplace. In part 1, we heard from leaders about the business perspective of change, and today we're going to be talking about change and work through considering the individual and through the individual's lens. And I could not ask for a better guest to explore this topic than Dr. Kati Peditto. Welcome, Kati.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm honored. Kati, would you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. I am Dr. Kati Peditto. I am the founding researcher of Built Experience Lab. I am a design psychologist, so I am interested in the intersection of human behavior and the built environment, which is how Lauren and I got connected today.
Yeah, I love it. I love our conversations, Kati. You know, as the way we work continues to evolve, there's this growing recognition that there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to doing our best work. And this, Kati, has been sort of the core of all of our conversations between you and I. We know that the expectations of work have changed, and so has our understanding of the individual. I think a lot of us are learning more about the idea that supporting an individual's performance starts with understanding how people work differently. And still, I feel like I don't know, my Instagram is full of like corporate influencers telling us about like, this is the hack to focus. And like, we know that focus and heads down work isn't necessarily a personality trait. Sometimes it's about working with our natural tendencies and our own energy levels. So how much do individual differences really matter when it comes to thinking about how we work, how we focus and find energy in getting work done?
So much, Lauren. Individual differences are the parts that make us a whole. And I know it sounds like a phrase on repeat right now. One size does not fit all. That's not a novel concept. We've been talking about that for almost a decade now. Workplaces have recognized that this 9-to-5 model in a cubicle setting is not the best environment nor the best policy for everyone to get work done. So the idea that one size does not fit all isn't new. And yet, we still haven't quite nailed down what it means to design for a really wide range of individual differences in work preferences, in focus, in sensory sensitivities. It's easy to say one size doesn't fit all, and it's really hard in practicality to actually nail down what that means for design.
Right. And as work continues to change, we've seen a lot of positives come from that in the individual lens. I have more autonomy in what I ask for and where I work and how I work. And change can be tricky for certain people at certain points in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even thinking about we've got natural rhythms throughout the day, but we also have natural rhythms throughout our lives as women go through menopause, for example. Our hormones change our ability to focus. Some individuals might even experience ADHD symptoms that they never had diagnosed before as those hormone shifts occur. That can occur during the month as well.
Interesting.
So there's these like very different rhythms beyond just our typical 24-hour circadian rhythm that we haven't totally tuned into as part of accommodating a rhythm of work.
So how do you think about that? How do you think or suggest that people start paying attention to their own patterns or figuring out what works best for them in this current moment? Do you have any hacks?
I'm with you, Lauren, that I feel like my Instagram feed is full of people being like, this is the next journal that's going to change your life. And I think I've had that journal 6 different times, maybe.
Sure.
I have like a graveyard of the next journal that's going to change my life. So I think practically, before you can ask for accommodations or even something less formal, you need to know your own energy pattern before you touch any journal or tool or system. Like calendar blocking, I think, is often something we recommend to individuals who need more structure to their focus activities. And yet,
Yeah.
if you don't know your own personal rhythm, then
Yeah.
calendar blocking doesn't help you because you don't know when you need to engage in that focus work. Deep work scheduling, that's a new tech trend right now. We are only going to do deep work on these 2 days of the week, no meetings ever. And yet, if you're not in tune with what your week looks like and what your natural rhythms are, that's not a really successful solution. So, the first thing I recommend to anyone who reaches out to me, which is often individuals who may be considering a new diagnosis, for example, maybe they have ADHD and they're trying to integrate that into their new work life. Pay attention to your own energy pattern before you implement anything. Track it for just a week. Make a journal of when you feel like you're in your flow, when you have focus. That might be 6 a.m., it might be noon, it might be 11 p.m.
Mm.
And there are some interesting wearable technology right now that can help you identify. We call that a chronotype over the course of your 24-hour circadian rhythm. You might be a night owl. The alternative is a morning lark. I am an early evening chronotype, which means that I do my best work in the late afternoon. My energy peaks later than your typical 9 to 5 schedule would accommodate, but I wouldn't know what to ask for if I didn't know when my energy peaks were.
Right.
So I feel like that's the key to sifting through some of the buzzwords right now. Take a week to understand your own energy pattern, or if you're in leadership, the energy patterns of the folks on your team. This is a really simple question to ask a new hire. Can you tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about when your energy peaks and when you feel like you do your best work? That's a really easy conversation starter to help you and your new hire think about what work looks like for them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just doing that self-reflection, a lot of us, I mean, my first foray into this industry was through ergonomics. And even there, like a lot of us come to work and sit at the desk we're given and don't even think about like, can I make this better? Same with, I think what you're saying about our workday, thinking about, does it have to, like, do I have barriers that are preventing me from exercising my autonomy to work when it's best with me, or can I ask for those things that would be more conducive to my work style?
Yeah, and that can be both a policy and built environment interaction, right? You could have all of the flexibility in the world to change your desk height or your task lighting or the type of chair that you're in. Like I'm
Yes.
in a very fun little movement chair right now in my home office. And yet, if I still had to exist within the structure of like arrive at 9 a.m., start your meetings, leave at 5 p.m. No amount of intervention in the built environment is going to overcome the lack of autonomy in our policy. So they need to work together. And
Mm.
I think that's where people like workplace strategists, right, really help make sure that any intervention we're investing in the built environment is also backed up and congruent with our workplace policy.
Do you see there being more acceptance of that, working alternative schedules in your work? Have you seen policies shifting to be more opening of that idea?
I think the most innovative workplaces right now are very open to that.
Yeah.
I've seen it truthfully, I've seen it shift over the last 5 to 6 years, right? During the pandemic, we really went towards a remote first model. And
Right.
now we're slowly starting to shift back. Many workplaces that had a full hybrid model are now requiring several days or a full week in office. And in some ways, it's an interesting cohort study, right? Like you've got mostly the same group of employees that went to remote work and now they're returning, and you can
Yeah.
kind of see whether there's a sweet spot in the middle here. And I think that sweet spot is allowing employees a sense of autonomy, as you mentioned, Lauren, to adapt their schedule. If there are
Right.
in-office requirements, does the timing matter, right? Does it
Mhm.
have to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in office from 9 to 5? what are we actually hoping to get out of being in the office? That's one
Right.
of the things that I think has really started to change, even as we are moving maybe a little bit more towards this hybrid return to work model, is that the meaning of being in the office is changing. I
Yes.
think originally we looked at being in the office as a requirement of work, that someone needed to supervise you, that you needed to be able to learn on the job. And those are certainly still really important elements of being in person.
Sure.
But we've learned to deliver a lot of that remotely. Now, I think a lot of workplaces are turning towards a return to office policy because of the social element, the social emotional element of being in a workplace with other people. And yet, just being in an office with other people doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting quality social interaction. So I
Mhm.
think that's the nut that we still have to crack. Even if you are fully remote, if you're hybrid, if you're fully returned to office, what does actual quality social interaction look like for your teams? And is there a built environment requirement to do that? I don't know if we have quite grasped that yet.
Yeah, I love where you're going though. And we have learned even companies who say, well, we need to be together to innovate. That could very well be true. And we love that idea of like being together helps us generate ideas. And we also know that those innovation sessions are maybe not as productive if I haven't also had protected individual time to think deeply, to prepare, to like come ready to share. So it's not just about the activities that we're doing together, but how do we also protect individuals?
Yes, I know if you're listening to the podcast, you can't hear me, but I'm clapping silently for this idea. And it goes back to your original thought, Lauren, about individual differences, because
Mhm.
there are some individuals for whom idea generation and innovation come from working directly with other people in a joint session. But there are also some people for whom innovation is a very personal, deep effort. And without accommodation for both of those, you're going to miss a lot of really important ideas from certain employees who just aren't being put in the right environment if the only way you're thinking about innovation is social contact.
Yeah, I love it. I think one of the other major changes that I've seen over my tenure in the work industry has been just the like volume of ways that we have at our disposal to communicate with people. Like when I started, I had a desk phone, like a tethered desk phone. And then I got a cell phone and then we got, you know, email that was like in our pocket. And then like now we have Teams and chat and like social media, there's a million ways to communicate. And I think a lot, I will say and I think probably other people do feel this pressure to be connected at all points in time during the day. How do we manage that change? Do you have any thoughts or any curiosities around like this idea that I'm being pulled out of my focus area because I want to be connected with my team or what's going on at work?
I am so excited that you shared this because now I get to share that about 12 hours ago last night, I was laying in bed trying to turn my brain off to go to sleep and realized that I had just been on my phone like so
Oh.
much
Uh-huh.
yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up making what I think was maybe an impulse purchase, but I'm excited to share with you once it gets
I
here.
love it.
It's called a physical phone.
Okay.
And it was created by a student at Stanford at the time, and now she's created this market of landline like physical phones. The one I ordered is like a cute rotary desk phone.
I can't wait to see it.
I know, I'm so excited. The idea is that your cell phone stays somewhere else when you're at home. And
Okay.
if you need an emergency call, if you need a work call, you pick it up on your landline. Your phone doesn't come into your bedroom with you. It doesn't necessarily need to come into your office. So I've been thinking a lot about how we minimize all of those notifications and disruptions
Uh-huh.
throughout the day, not just even in your work hours, but also in your personal time on your weekends as well. We're so hyper connected right now. I know everyone
Sure.
feels that.
Is there a need, do you think, to have just like we were talking about with our teams, we can have a conversation with our teammates around, this is when I feel like I need to protect my time. Is there also a conversation that we can have around, like, to your point, like, if you need to call me, call this rotary phone. If it's an ASAP, otherwise, like, I'll get to it when I get to it. Or like, this kind of communication is delivered via this style. If it's an emergency, it's a different style. Is that a conversation you're seeing people have in the work environments?
I think the most effective managers and effective employers are having those conversations. Do I think it's ubiquitous right now? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
still, well, you have to break out of a lot of expectations in order to make a workplace move like that. And yet I've started to see more and more email signatures indicating when working hours are.
Well, that's a good tip.
I've seen more and more like Teams away messages that say, here's when I'm working, here's when you can expect a response. So there's a level of responsibility to it. We're not just asking for accommodations, but we're also making our expectations clear to other people as well, so that we can still function as a team and find times for touch points and social interaction, but we're not constantly on and available. Your brain still gets that moment of deep focus work. There was a study published in 2009 by a researcher named Sophie Leroy, and she had basically just had participants switch from one task to another. Sometimes they would finish the first task. Sometimes they would leave it incomplete. And if you left the first task incomplete, you performed much worse on the second task.
That's so interesting.
And you were like, from in all different ways. So you were like less accurate. You had a hard time focusing. And so we perform noticeably worse on that second task when we leave the first task incomplete. And there's another research team at UC Irvine who's been doing similar work, and they've framed it as interruption recovery cost. They suggest that you actually need 23 minutes to fully return to like the depth of focus that you had before an interruption. And those interruptions could literally just be responding to a Teams message or answering an email or like looking at your door to tell someone not to come in your office when they knock. So that is the cost of recovery, even if the interruption itself is just seconds long.
Yeah, and you can imagine how that would change your decisions around where you're working and like who's in your proximity, what tools you're using, that sort of idea. That's so interesting. Say it again, interruption
recovery cost. It was Gloria Marx's team at UC Irvine, 23 minutes to get back into the original task. And often people aren't even getting back into the original task because now they are in their email system, and so they're looking at other emails. Even if they want to return to task A, they're totally distracted and off the path they were on to begin with.
Right. And it's not 23 minutes of recovery or rest. It's 23 minutes of like cycling to the next thing.
Yeah, it's not 23 minutes where your brain is taking an appropriate break. It's 23 minutes of active cognitive effort to just be doing work. And we're not setting our employees up to minimize those types of interruptions.
That's so interesting. I love that research. That's great. Thanks for bringing that up. I also want to get your take a little bit too on the pace of change in the work environment and how, change is hard. Change is really hard for individuals. You know, I don't know what to expect when I go in. I don't know how that's going to affect me. Do you have any thoughts on how an individual can manage change or cope with change in our current work environments?
The biggest change I hear folks talking about often in the workplace is change management when there is a new style of work. So a firm or an organization has a brand new office, they've changed their desk type, maybe they've moved to hoteling or hot desking. So that's a major organizational and human resources change that needs to be managed. And often we're not making sure that that change process is congruent with the tasks that our employees are doing. I think with with change management, we often talk about the big change. We've
Yeah.
redone our environment. We're moving our employees to a new model of work. And so we're going to invest a lot of time and energy as an organization to preparing our employees for that. Usually it's a preparation process with only one right answer. Like, we're moving to hot desking. You'll get used to it. And my argument often in those conversations is that 20-30% of your employees are never going to get used to it. This is not the model of work that aligns with how they work best. And so if we're having a change management conversation at the leadership level, at the C-suite level, we need to be talking about what the alternatives are if this doesn't work and what metrics leadership is going to use to determine whether this was successful for their individual workplace. And it might vary even within locations of the same company. You know, your Dallas office might have a very different rhythm than your Denver office. I've seen it before. So we need to have some level of accountability at the leadership and C-suite level to know what's working.
Yeah.
But at the individual level, we also need some level of accountability and tracking. Your workplace has moved to a 4-day in-office model. What does that look like for you? Before you have that conversation with your manager, have you actually tracked your energy and your flow over the course of the week so that you know what to ask for?
Yeah.
And that could be formal accommodations if we're talking something like ADHD or autism, but it could also be informal accommodations, a conversation that you start with your manager. Again, I think it comes back to, on both sides, if we're managing the pace of change here, we have to have some way to track what's working and what's not.
Yeah. And I think, I've heard some companies start calling change management transition management. And to your point, like, a lot of times employees don't have a lot of choice in how the workplace is changing. It's sort of presented as like, this is what we're doing. And so that idea of transition management is, how do we help you get on with the change that's inevitably happening?
I think framing it that way too puts more autonomy in the hands of the employee as well. Like, we recognize that this is going to be a transition.
Yeah.
We recognize that this change won't happen immediately. It will be a transition period. What can we do to help you with this transition? I think those are the organizations that have the most success with those dramatic.
I love that framing.
Yeah.
Just an acknowledgement that we're going to hit some bumps. We're not going to get it perfect. We're learning, you're learning. I think that, I don't know, and it doesn't have to be complicated, right? Why are we making this change? How is it going to impact you? What can you expect? These are things that we should be able to communicate and give people more confidence that it's going to be okay and everything's going to smooth out eventually.
In any design process, we talk about the value of post-occupancy evaluation, or POE. And if you talk to most designers, they would say, yes, we need more POEs. We need more evidence for what works and what doesn't. And it's not just in the workplace sector. It's in healthcare and education and hospitality. And yet, we don't always treat a big workplace transition as something where a POE could be valuable.
Right.
Because that's a big investment for a company. It's a big investment in personnel costs. It's a big investment in equipment and real estate. So why aren't we monitoring what's working, what's not, and giving ourselves a check-in 12 to 18 months later to tweak what might need to be tweaked? It's okay to admit that in a big transition, there might need to be different accommodations. And I just don't see that happening as often in workplace, especially when the work is being done internally at an organization, when in reality, that could be exactly the permission that leadership needs to say, I see this isn't quite landing how we wanted it to land. It's been a year. Let's try something a little different. It doesn't mean you've wasted your investment. It means you're investing more in your employees.
100%. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we know better now. So why wouldn't we want to do better?
We know better now. So why wouldn't we want to do better? Yes.
Are there any trends that you have noticed or changes on the horizon that either make you really excited about workplace as an individual or make you curious about how it's going to how we're going to navigate?
There is a trend that's starting in education right now, especially in higher education, that I think is going to translate into workplace. And I'm curious to see how this shift happens over the next few years. I know we're all burnt out on AI talk. I so get that. I so get it. And yet, learning delivery through AI is something that a lot of educators, K-12 and high ed alike, are having to grapple with right now.
Yeah.
If learning delivery can take place entirely online at any time, then what is the value of the built environment for students and for teachers as well? I think that the school environment is going to start to become primarily a place for applying knowledge
Yeah.
and for social emotional learning,
Sure.
almost as a detox from the sheer amount of information that we can get digitally now. So when we walk into a building, we're not necessarily going to be looking at our computers to learn.
Yeah.
We are going to be actually using that opportunity to develop our social emotional skills. We're going to apply the work that we've learned, whether that's writing, speaking, or career and technical education programs. So the role of the environment dramatically changes when we can access education anywhere. I think we're going to see something really, really, really similar with the workplace environment too. Once we can do any of our work wherever, and that's already pretty much true,
Yeah.
then we have to think about our real estate investments very differently. And it's not just that we should have our employees coming into the office so that they can talk to each other.
Yeah.
There needs to be a deeper social emotional value to the work environment that isn't just meeting rooms or hot breakfast on Tuesdays that gets people into the office. We know that that's a huge predictor of how long someone stays with an organization, and yet we're not treating the built environment as a key lever for that type of engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also say, while many of us can focus at home or in a third space, I do believe the office environment still needs to support focus work or alone time or even respite in the office. Those are things that, we also probably don't want.
Yeah, whenever I'm asked, I never say that I am remote first only.
Uh-huh.
I think there is a lot of value in having a physical space that is dedicated to work. Recognizing in the theme of our conversation today that there are individual differences about who is going to get the most out of the physical space. But even if only 50% of your employees get that value out of physical space, that's still a really, really good investment. If 50% of your employees work better at home or in a more hybrid model, that's okay. I think, again, that's more of a policy discussion too. How do we accommodate from a human resources perspective and a payroll perspective and a supervision and teaching and learning perspective? How do we manage that? But it's okay if different people get different value out of the physical office space.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, Katie, here's the last question I have for you. And we can talk, I'm sure, for days on this topic, but if you could encourage people to pay attention to one thing about how they work or where they work that could have an impact on their day, what would that be?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but before you buy anything that is going to manage your calendar or promise to improve your focus, or you buy the next cool timer that's going to keep you on task, sit for a week with a piece of paper or a journal in front of you and figure out what your natural rhythm throughout the day looks like. We think about circadian rhythms so often, but we don't think about ultradian rhythms. Ultradian rhythms are 90 to 120 minutes, like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours cycle during the day where we go from alert to rest. And that's a really natural, normal thing. See what your ultradian rhythm looks like. Where do you peak? Where do you recover? And how can you then build more structure around that?
Yeah.
I wish I could say, like, here is the next thing that I believe in that is going to solve your problem, but I haven't found it for myself yet.
It's amazing. And it's probably harder to do. Like, I think you're right. It takes some time to figure that out. Every day might look a little bit different, but I totally agree with you. That way we can align our work with our day rather than just, working harder or getting frustrated. Aligning the work around our natural energy makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
not just thinking about optimizing our day or optimizing our work schedule, but making it simpler than that.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation runs the risk of feeling like we're complicating work when in reality, I think that work becomes far less complicated when we don't view focus or lack of focus as a personal failure or a personality problem, but rather a structural conflict with how we've created our work environment and our work policies. Once you align the way you work with your work, that's really simple. That's flow. That is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's great. And before we wrap it up, Katie, is there anything else that you'd love to share with us about you or how you work or what you're excited about?
I'm really, really excited to see what the future of work looks like. I don't think it's a question of where we work, but rather how we are supporting the work across a wide variety of individual differences. As a neurodivergent woman myself with autism and ADHD, this is both a professional and personal interest of mine, recognizing that many, many people enter the workforce feeling as if it is a personal failure to not be able to focus over a typical 9-to-5 environment in a typical, office.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that there is more and more emphasis on how we address that structure and that tension instead of just accepting that some people might not work as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Katie. And I just really value you and your opinions and then thinking about how do we create work environments that, honor who we are as humans and really, get to the root of that idea and that one size fits all mentality is not helpful for anyone.
Like, what a cool antidote to the extensive AI conversations, to be thinking more about what makes work human and how we will bring joy and experience and vitality to our work. That's such a human thing that AI can't recreate, but it's something that we need to cultivate in our office culture.
Yeah. And then change seems a lot easier, right? If we're working with humans and work, seems a lot easier and more exciting. That idea of attraction, retention seems a lot easier. I love it.
Yes, I know. I feel like it's one of the traps I find myself in a lot is thinking about human experience as a business case.
Yeah.
When in reality, we should just want to make everyone's lives better, right? But I recognize that often we're having conversations that result in investment decisions. And so we often need to frame human experience in metrics like retention, satisfaction, productivity. But all of those can go hand in hand. Like, making people more satisfied and feel more human and authentically themselves at work is a good business decision.
Yeah, I love it. And that's a perfect place to wrap it up, Katie. I just appreciate you in this conversation. We sort of were verging on the topic of part 3, but join us in our next episode where we're going to go deeper into the idea of how space responds to changing behaviors and needs. Katie, we'd love to have you back in the future. Thank you for spending time with us today. We look forward to continuing this conversation on our next episode, and we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. You provided some wonderful prompts, and I'm excited to see what happens with part 3.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on Tell Me More. For more insights and stories, subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and connect with us on social @Allsteel. See you next time.